Also known as just The Return of Pykel, Lupin's back in green for this OVA sequel story to the second episode of Series 1. I have a video up already covering that episode obviously, but for those who can't be bothered, here's a rundown. Pykel was a trickster. He made use of things like reinforced glass to give the illusion he was floating, for example. Fujiko got involved with him and stole a microfilm containing a formula that made him impervious to damage. Lupin used the formula on himself to fight Pykel, who was last seen falling down a waterfall while on fire as his own dose was wearing off. Pykel was initially voiced by Aimee Esumi in Series 1, while here he's voiced by recurring voice actor and one of the pilot voices of Lupin himself, Nachi Nozawa. Ryo Katsuragi serves as writer while Mamoru Hamatsu directs. No leading lady this time around, and the ending is a remix of Series 2's love theme. Zenigata has invited himself to the party of one Count d'Azur, thanks to Lupin sending a calling card. D'Azur's not particularly worried, even going so far as to drink a wine with Lupin's name to taunt him. Lupin leaves his name with the floor show models and steals the wine with little effort. The real target was an item in the bottle, a large gem known as the Celestial Crystal, as Zenigata discovers in his failed attempt to apprehend Lupin. Lupin discusses his prize, one of a collection, with Jigen as he disguises as a clown. He tries to throw Zenigata off his scent, but the nose knows and Zenigata knows a thief when he senses him. Zenigata chases Lupin to an art store house, but Lupin senses something's off about Zenigata when he starts asking for Fujiko. It only gets even stranger when he starts breathing fire at Lupin in the street. Lupin manages to escape being burned with some trickery of his own. A stray monkey's tail catches fire in the fake Zenigata's attack, and causes chaos when it extinguishes it in a crate of fireworks. On the plus side, this also gives Lupin a chance to escape the imposter, who seems to have supernatural abilities. Lupin and Jigen head out to eastern Greece to rendezvous with Goemon, who's fighting in a tournament while searching for a crystal. They speculate on who the Zenigata double would be, given that for once it's not either of them using the disguise. The only real clue is the crystals, as there are 7 in total and Lupin's only got 3 currently. Jigen starts sneezing as they arrive thanks to some kind of local allergies. On top of the sneezing, Jigen also starts going hypersensitive and hearing sounds he shouldn't. To counter this, the local elder plays a harp that has a healing effect, explaining it ties to a theory on musical pitch and tone from Pythagoras. Fujiko soon shows up in bad shape. After cleaning up, she reveals she managed to steal one of the crystals for herself. She also knows that Lupin's been hunted by his old foe, the man who called himself a magician, having somehow survived his burns and waterfall tumble. One of Goemon's fights is against a swordsman with a crystal on his sword's hilt. When struck by Zantetsuken, it plays a strange tone, possibly A in C major. The elder steps forward, commenting on the tone having healing properties similar to his harp playing. That night, Pykel makes an attack on Fujiko. She's got countermeasures in place, but he's able to avoid damage with some sort of illusory power. Floating back outside, he encounters Jigen, who notes he's looking good for a dead and burned guy. Jigen then opens fire, but Pykel's able to stop the bullets from hitting him. Jigen switches target to some robotic birds, which Pykel is unnerved by as they weren't supposed to be audible. Lupin arrives on the scene, leading Pykel to demand the crystals. Lupin asks about his burns, noting it's odd he only seems to come out at night, before firing up some lights. Pykel spots him heading into a house on a cliffside and follows. The house is revealed to be a fake as Goemon cuts it down and sends it into the sea below. Lupin suspects that won't be enough, however. Following after Pykel to an island base, Lupin notes to Jigen the sun's close to rising, so Pykel was likely planning to run anyway. The base is lined with various traps that they have to navigate through. It's also implied the robot birds have something to do with them. Eventually, they reach his main lab and discover various chemicals that Lupin suspects he uses for hiding his injuries. He also looks at Pikel's notes on the crystals and takes a few photos for his own research. Pikel appears before Lupin as he leaves the island. He blows up their boat and informs them he's got the crystal from Greece. Following this, he attacks with water spouts, but Lupin and Jigen counter with a freeze spray they swiped from the lab. They then head to a rocket ship they plan to use to escape, sticking Pikel down with an adhesive they also grabbed. Pikel's not out yet as he detonates the rocket by remote. He doesn't account for the rocket having an escape pod, however. Upon returning to their base, the Elder informs Lupin and Jigen that the village was attacked by Pikel for the crystal, and Fujiko's gone missing. Goemon wasn't able to hit him either, but Lupin suspects it was all just another trick. Analysing the 3 crystals he already has, Lupin notes they all seem to have a pattern connecting all of them. Pikel, who's also running tests on the crystals, notes they seem to emit a sound similar to that of the Siren of Myth. He receives a message from Lupin, arranging to meet at the Arena Theatre for a showdown. Fujiko warns not to underestimate Lupin and hopes to get the crystals once everything's done with. Pikel's waiting when Lupin arrives at the arena, having set up his crystals as a musical instrument. The frequency given by the crystals as Pikel plays sends the local animals into a frenzy, not to mention setting off Jigen's illness again. Pikel states his intention is to break Lupin's will with the crystal's power. Unfortunately for him, Lupin has earplugs to counter, similar to how Ulysses and his men were able to counter the sirens. Not to mention, the Elder's harp can counter the crystal's melody. Jigen makes an attack on Lupin under the influence of the crystals. They move out to the cliffside, where Goemon manages to block one of Jigen's shots. The Elder tosses the crystal from the sword hilt their way, hoping the noise it creates from Zantetsuken will break the mind control. Unfortunately, it's too late and Lupin takes a bullet, falling off the cliff. Jigen snaps out of it and dives after him, but Pikel fires at him from a helicopter. Fujiko's also on board the helicopter, holding up Pikel for the crystals. After confirming their location, she hijacks the helicopter for herself. Pikel flies away with a hang glider, safe in the knowledge that he gave her fakes. The sun rises as he returns to his island base. A missile strikes his glider, revealed to be fired by Lupin. Jigen's bullet was blocked by the crystal, and the body shot up in the sea was just a dummy. Caught in a net, Pikel's defeated as morning arrives. There are 2 types of Lupin III fans, those who find this one of the worst entries and those who haven't seen it yet. Well, not entirely fair I guess, as even the worst Lupin stuff is still at least somewhat watchable if nothing else. Back in my review of the initial Pikel episode, I said Pikel works as a foil to Lupin due to them both relying on trickery. The big problem there was that because it was such an early point in the franchise, we didn't really have the characters' personalities down as much as now. Unfortunately, this isn't too much of an improvement. The elements are certainly there, such as Pikel wanting revenge on the gang and potentially looking for something to heal his burn wounds in the form of the crystals, but it doesn't really come together properly. The whole ending also just culminates in kind of an anticlimax. Lupin fakes death, catches Pikel, the end. It also seems to go back and forth on whether Pikel actually has magical abilities this time or just relied on science like before. Likely the latter given the ending and the lab, I suppose. There are some extra endings, including one where the Elder's revealed to be evil in some fashion, but they don't really add anything either, as this was just a one-off and unlikely to be followed up on. Art and animation's a bit weak here too, which is unfortunate given you'd figure an OVA would be going a bit harder on the quality. The 2D movements stiff in a lot of places, and the characters tend to look like they're on non-interactive backgrounds a lot of the time. The 3D elements also look horribly out of place. Not really coloured to look in line with the 2D characters, and it just ends up looking completely jarring. Granted, a lot of anime around this time seem to be trying this technique, and it has improved at blending them somewhat over the years, so I guess Lupin was just really following the trend. I'd be lying if I said it was all bad, to be honest. Jigen's casual reaction to Pikel being alive amused me for one thing. Also funny to think the plan wouldn't have worked anyway if the crystal stolen at the beginning was found out to be fake all along. Plus, while the plot's not exactly great, it's at least comprehensible enough, extra endings aside. Overall, more or less skippable, but even as a bad entry, still more watchable than the worst of a lot of other series. Next time, we go back to the beginning with the tale of the gang's first contact. Until then,